Welcome back to Whiteout Weekly as we are officially here. The week that's been circled since the schedule came out as we face number four, the Ohio State Buckeyes. But first, before we get into that game preview, a little bit of housekeeping on our side. Couple injuries to keep note of here on Penn State side. Denied Dennis Sutton, a huge one to keep an eye on, opposite Abdul Carter and Ohio State's banged up offensive line. He suffered a groin injury. Those are so tough to come back to from. I know that he practiced, but I'm going to lean towards probably not being able to go just because that's such a tough injury. So we're looking at Amin Vanover and Smith Fulvert to fill in for him if he's out.
Yeah, I mean Vanover, yep, Smith Vilbert. They showed up big time in that second half against Wisconsin. I know
Mhm.
Deny tried to give it a go. I think he had one snap coming back at a halftime and then went right back to the sideline. So definitely looking to those guys to step up again in another key moment in the season, another big time game.
Uh, who wears 15 of those two?
Vanover.
Yeah, he when he made the sack, I'm like looking at it, and I was like, oh yeah, never mind. They could do both numbers on both sides of the ball. Uh, Anthony Donka, any update on him? Key piece of the offensive line. I know we have a pretty solid backup in Nolan Rucci, transfer from Wisconsin to fill in for him, but would like to have Anthony Donka out there.
Yeah, Donka seems like we have a litany of game time decisions here, but Donka is another one that Franklin mentioned as a game time decision. Was active participant in the Wednesday recording here on a Wednesday in the Wednesday practice viewing session. He's nursing a shoulder injury, and it was also noticed that he had, I believe it was his right ankle heavily taped up. So he's was active, was moving around, definitely nursing those couple injuries there and moving a little bit gingerly. So it'll likely lead right up until kickoff, see if he's good to go or whether it's going to be Rooch stepping in.
Yeah, gonna need him or Rooch, all the guys on the offensive line to step up this week. But let's go to the biggest one that ended up being almost a blessing because Wisconsin really didn't know what to do with Bo Pribula down the stretch. But Drew Aller is a game time decision with that knee. Bo Pribula seems like he has all the confidence of all the coaches, all the players in the world to step up and be QB1 if need be. But what is the status of our star quarterback, Drew Aller?
Yeah, I mean, not just with Allar, but with all these, Franklin and the coaching staff don't get into specifics with or details of what injuries are, how long guys will be out, but he indicates that, or I think his exact quote was, Drew's played enough football for us where this thing will lead right up until game time. So again, he was getting all the first team reps in practice today. They were equally giving reps to actually Bo and Grunk. And I'll come back to that because that's actually very noteworthy here. But Aller
Very wow.
was
I
it
didn't know
was
that.
an active participating in practice, going through all the regular motions, not just passing intents, but also ball carrier drills, getting on the ground, going through fumble drills. So he seemed, from what I could see in the videos from the Penn State local media, he looked about the same as he has all season. So I think that's a good sign. I think this could be, not saying that they would be doing it purposely, but I think this could work a little bit in Penn State's favor, where you leave that sneaky suspicion for Jim Knowles in that defense, not knowing. I mean, you got to prepare for both at this point, and I think
Mm.
having Bo be able to show that dimension of what he can bring to the offense was huge. But getting back to, in a world where Aller doesn't go here, Franklin mentioned that they're getting Grunk some heavy reps this week because if Aller can't go, talking about a true freshman stepping into that backup quarterback role where if something were to happen, God forbid, he's next in line. So that's definitely noteworthy. But if you were to ask me right now, I think Aller is going to go.
That was something I was considering. Like, so you have all this tape on Allar now, and you only have a quarter, a half, maybe a
Hmm.
couple series here and there of Bo Purpula. You could potentially just handle Kotelnicki. You could just run out there against Ohio State and run a completely different offense that they have no preparation for whatsoever.
For sure.
It's just like in the back of my mind the whole. I mean, I want Drew Allar to start. Don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
but that's just in the back of my mind. Like what? Like we could just run him out there, and they would have no idea what the hell just hit them.
Hmm.
Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Mike Tyson. Like if we run Bo Pribula and we just run it down their throat first drive, I don't know, man. That's just
Like to be rocking.
it's like the devil and the angel on your shoulder, you know. But either way, I have full and utmost faith that whoever started behind center will lead us to victory as we head into the make or break game, the measuring stick game. Again, the game that's been circled since the schedule came out. The big noon kickoff, Ohio State again ducking us at night. But it is a top 10, a top five clash as number three, 7-0, Penn State hosts the number four team in the nation, Ohio State, 6-1, coming off a pretty sloppy win at home against Nebraska. Their only loss this year was that 32-31 game against Oregon, where Will Howard slid inbounds with no timeouts left. Very unfortunate for on that one for them. That was replayed over and over again. I felt bad for the kid.
Hmm.
Um, the line of the game been going back and forth between Penn State plus three, Penn State plus 3.5. Last time I saw the over under was 45 on the dot. Do you have those numbers as well?
Yeah, I think it's been hovering between 45 and 47. Can get us the latest here. Again, recorded on a Wednesday.
So while he looks that up, um, we mentioned Ohio State, their offensive line is suffering through some brutal injuries and struggling heavily over the past 2 weeks and showed up particularly in the run game. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And on third down, they were 1 for 10 on third down against Nebraska. They did lose their backup left tackle, Zen Mikowski, during that game, who was struggling to admit it. He had four pressures and two sacks allowed. Uh, Mikowski, the guy that got injured, replaced their starter, Josh Simmons, who unfortunately it was a Downs T suffered a knee-ending injury in the loss to Oregon. So with both their left tackles, their starter Josh Simmons, who's a force, Zen Mikowski, who looked a little leaky, could be a potential mark on that line. Ryan Day said in his press conference, if Mikowski is out, we're not going to all of a sudden radically change what we do. We just have to move some things around. So those things that are being moved around, aka players, Donovan Jackson. Ryan Day says he can play him anywhere on the offensive line, and he has absolute confidence that he'll succeed. He normally plays left guard, two-time all Big Ten first teamer. He's going to shift to left tackle, senior on that squad. Next to him, Luke Montgomery. He took over at left guard after the injury. He's been practicing there all week, so they're, again, not radically changing anything, sticking to what they know, sticking to him at left guard. Center, Seth McLaughlin, sticking to his position. Right guard, Austin Searveld. He came in the game after the injury. And in 5 pass block snaps, I think he allowed one pressure. And in earlier in the season, he filled in at left guard for 2 games, but in practice at right guard. So again, comfortability, got to leave him there. And finally, right tackle Josh Fryer. But with all the shuffling of the offensive line, it's just been absolute mayhem back there. It showed up so vividly against the Cornhuskers. They had 2.6 yards per carry. That's without sack yardage between one of the best running back duos in college football in Ole Miss transfer Quinn Sean Junkins and Travion Henderson. They each had 10 carries, but neither could top 30 yards on the ground. And we'll talk about them later. And the leader of that offense, Will Howard, only had to throw the ball 16 times against Nebraska, but that's all that he needed. Completed 13 of those, did throw an interception, but had some explosive plays with those 13 completions. 3 of them went for touchdowns and threw for 221 yards through the air. So, despite their run game struggling, stifling, they still have the 22nd ranked passing offense in all of college football with their just rotating cast of NFL caliber wide receivers. Can we get a freaking break here? Yet another 5-star recruit who looks like one of the best in college football already. And that's freshman sensation Jeremiah Smith in the same realm as Alabama's Ryan Williams, just both making head turning highlight replay after replay catches. They're both just absolutely insane. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, just like you mentioned, it just seems like you can never get a break with that receiving court. But I think with the when you go back to the offensive line, by the way, sorry, going all the way back, the over under is confirmed at 45 via DraftKings, so we're good there.
Okay. Sorry, rambled there. But yeah, thank you for
When you
that.
look when you look at the offensive line and look, this isn't a matchup where it's not like this is an environment that Ohio State or Ryan Day and this team haven't played in before. So there's no doubt where they're always going to be ready to go. But I think it's worth noting that yes, they got guys that are comfortable with shuffling, but I think there's a continuity aspect there when you go into a hostile environment, everyone being on the same cadence, being on the same page. I would love to be able to see that Penn State crowd force a couple key in some key moments or even just to start the game, some false starts against the Ohio State offense, again, just with not a lot of continuity up front. So I think that definitely could play a factor in this one. But like I said, they played in this environment before and they've been able to handle it. So it's not like it's entirely new, but I think it's something to watch out for.
Yeah, and especially with guys in new positions and, obviously crowd noise and everything
Mhm.
like that. Going over to Jim Knowles' defense typically relies on his front four to get some pressure, but he absolutely loves to bring the heat. The past 2 games I've watched, he's blitzed at, I don't even know what rate. I should have looked it up, but at an absurd rate. And
Mhm.
he can do it. I mean, he can play cover one or cover two robber with that incredible secondary, which we will mention. The one guy that I notice every time Ohio State's on the screen is Caleb Downs.
Mhm.
He is just everywhere on the field. Just a natural instinct for the ball. When they put him in that robber position, he knows exactly where the ball's going, exactly how to defend the pass, read routes, know exactly where it's going, get tackles. He's a guy that if I'm on Penn State, I'm pointing out Caleb Downs, knowing where he is on every single play. And then one other guy, that I still have nightmares. This is the third year we played him, JT.
Yep.
3 years in a row of nightmares of this guy taking over the game in 2022 single-handedly. Will never leave my mind, despite his lack of production a little bit. Throughout his career at Ohio State, he does lead the team in sacks, four total this season. But what else we got on the defense? Oh, Denzel Burke as well, former
Mhm.
freshman All-American. Haven't really heard his name much mentioned this year.
Yeah, I think when you look at the defense as a whole, like you mentioned with Jim Knowles, likes to utilize that front four to get pressure on the quarterback. So mentioned JT already. Yes, we all have nightmares from that 2022 game. Had an impact in last year's game as well. I think he had a sack and a forced fumble in that one. So he's definitely been a Penn State killer. So he's one to look out for. And then just rounding out the front four, you got Jack Sawyer, senior, who he's another name who it seems like we've played him 5 or 6 times now, or some iteration of Jack Sawyer at this point, but leads the
Probably gonna
team
be
in
a
pressures. He's got
probably
two,
gonna be a top 50 pick too.
yeah, for sure. A lot of these guys, on that front four will likely be playing on Sundays, but
Yeah.
2.5 sacks on the year, and then the two tackles, you get Tyleik Williams, Ty Hamilton. Tyleik Williams, big body, 6'3", 327, who's able to clog up some double teams, clog up the gaps. So that's where they rely on that front four a lot. At the linebacker spot, couple Nino or one keynote, which we thought may have an impact in this game, but linebacker Arvell Reese, if you were watching that Nebraska game in the second half, got thrown out for targeting. Ohio State ended up appealing that call, going to the NCAA and to the Big Ten committee, and they ended up reversing that and saying that it was not targeting. So he will be available right out the jump. He's got 19 tackles on the year, but one of the bigger impact linebackers has been Sony Styles, converted safety.
Yeah, he was another guy that I saw all over the field, or them calling his name all over the field.
Yeah, he actually leads the team in tackles with 43 this year and has been
That's probably
extremely
why.
effective in pass coverage, especially as a safety convert. So he's already used to those pass coverage techniques. So he's been huge there. And then you got Cody Simon, senior, again, been around the block, second on the team in tackles. So they got a lot of experience in that front seven. And then as you get to the back end of the defense, you already mentioned Caleb Downs, who has really, not that he needed to, he was a standout stud at Alabama. So he was one of the bigger transfer portal gets this year. But especially over the last few games, has really been coming into his own. He's got 30 total tackles, excuse me, on the year. Also an impact player in the return game from a punt return standpoint. Hasn't quite broken one yet this year, but you saw last year, I think it was, he had an 85-yard punt return touchdown. So he's got that game-changing special teams ability that you got to watch out for. And
And
then
then,
lastly, you already mentioned Denzel Burke, who's had a very rocky Ohio State career. Started off with a bang. He was a freshman All-American.
yeah,
Second year, didn't really took a turn for the worst. And then last year, had a big rebound season, was actually contemplating enter the draft.
that's what I
And
was gonna say. Am I thinking of a different Denzel Burke? He was supposed to be like one of the top corners last year, I thought.
yeah, you might be thinking maybe Denzel Ward, who's in the league from Ohio
Oh,
State.
Denzel Ward. Yes, that's what I'm thinking of. Yes.
But yeah, Burke, big time cornerback prospect. He's bounced back in some regard this year, but when you go back and watch that Oregon tape, I mean, he got absolutely torched by Oregon star wide receiver Evan Stewart. I think he had 7 catches, almost 150 yards, one touchdown in that one. So still a little bit of an up and down career to this point for Burke. And then you got Davison. I'm going to pronounce this wrong. Igbinosun.
Yeah.
Igbinosun.
Yeah.
Uh, Honorable All Big Ten last year, former transfer from Ole Miss. physical corner, likes to use his hands a lot and grab receivers. I think Jim Knowles was even quoted this week where they have him practicing with gloves on so that he isn't tempted to grab the receiver. He's don't have the exact numbers, but I know he's committed a handful of defensive pass interference penalties this
Seven,
year.
seven pass in coverage, seven penalties.
Seven total. Yeah, thank you. So he's one to look out for. And then at the nickel, we got Jordan Hancock had a big game against Nebraska, forced fumble, had that game sealing interception, and actually had a team leading 76.9 grade in pass coverage last week. So, I mean, just studs across the board across his defense. So Jim Knowles, as he has in his Ohio State career, has a lot of tools to use in his scheme and has been very effective.
Yeah, aside from Lathan Ransom, their highest NFL passer rating against when targeted is Denzel Burke with 106.9 rating against him when he's thrown against. He has two picks, two touchdowns on thrown at him on the year. And then their lowest is your nickelback Jordan Hancock with a 63.1 NFL pass rating against. One interception, two pass breakups, three forced incompletions. Lathan Ransom. I thought I saw his name in injury news, but I'm not sure if it was just like a strain or, they brought him out of the game precautionary. Um, any update on him?
Yeah, last played in the Oregon game. He was actually banged up the game prior to that and then did not go against Nebraska. Ryan Day said that he's full participant in practice and he will be a go. So yet another cog in the tool chest for Ohio State's defense will be suited up and starting alongside Caleb Downs on Saturday.
All righty. That's a pretty good summary of what we're going to get out of Ohio State.
Hmm.
One last thing. Last week, field position, humongous. Expect another field flipping game out of Riley Thompson.
Hmm.
Let's go into our matchups to win. Dave, why don't you lead us off?
Yeah, so I got two. I call them a 1A, 1B. 1A being with it not being players on the field having the true impact, but I think this
The
one,
macro.
the macro, I think it comes down to the coordinators. And specifically, I think it's going to be an interesting matchup between, for one, Chip Kelly versus Tom Allen, two first-time headquarter or coordinators in this matchup. But on the flip side, you got Andy Kotelnicki versus Jim Knowles. So these games typically have been close, and one of the pain points for Penn State and for us and all Penn State fans is that offense has really not been able to get us over the hump in this matchup. Offense has been stale. It's been hard to manufacture points. We brought in the big Zamboni to do the opposite of that and generate big plays. We've seen that this year. So Penn State so far this year, 17.7 plays from scrimmage per game of 10 plus yards, which I thought was a really showcases what the explosiveness that
Difference
Kotelnicki's
too. Yeah.
brought to this offense.
Yeah.
It
Holy
actually
shit.
ranks seventh in all of college football.
Wow.
And then when you look at this is really just going to boil down to an ultimate chess match or the old what something's got to give because Ohio State is giving up on defense an average of 8.6 plays per game of 10 plus yards, which is second best in the country.
Hmm.
So really
But
two titans in that component coming together. And then from Kotelnicki, you have all the pre-snap motions, the bizarre formations, thinking of any which way to line up Tyler Warren versus Jim Knowles with his infamous disguise coverages and blitzes. So again, it's one of those where as a Penn State fan, you're coming into this, yes, he has some question marks at the quarterback spot, but feeling really good about this offense and what still anticipating that there's still some tricks up Kotelnicki's sleeve that he hasn't shown yet. And I think there was even a quote where someone was asking, "What haven't they done with Tyler Warren yet?" And I think he said, "Just wait and see." So interested to see that,
Well,
to see how that comes to fruition. But definitely feeling much better with what we have with this offense coming into this matchup. So it's an ultimate chess match there. And then my 1B, we talked about it a little bit with that wide receiver group for Ohio State. This one, it's really going to come down to the Penn State corners versus the Ohio State wide receivers.
that
So
Jeremiah Smith kid, man, he's something else.
yeah, I
He's
mean,
something else, dude.
we thought Marvin Harrison was sensational as a freshman. He's proving that he may be beyond that. So you got a little bit of a question mark with DDS. Not sure if he's going to go or not. I think we're leaning where we're counting him out. So you're definitely going to need to be able to generate some pressure on Will Howard. But regardless of that, quarterback group's going to be facing the biggest test to date this year. You got three really, really good wide. You got one sensational wide receiver. Ibuka's pretty damn close to being in that category. And then you got Carnell Tate, who has shown that he could produce. Had a big week last week against Nebraska. I think he had four
Yeah,
catches,
huge.
102 yards. So you got three standout wide receivers. So when you look at that, you got three corners that are going to be tested here. You got AJ Harris, who we've seen a lot of really good things from in his first year, a former 5-star from Georgia. You got Jalen Kimber, you got Cam Miller. I think it's going to pay off that Elliott Washington has gotten some run these last few weeks because you're going to need to be able to have some depth to be able to keep up with those guys. But I think this is really the matchup where we've struggled, where we've haven't been able to shut down these wide receivers in past matchups, especially a Marvin Harrison. So it's going to be critical not only to get pressure on Howard, but for these corners to really stay with these wide receivers as long as they can.
Yeah, it's tough every year when you're facing, first round talent at wide receiver every year, wide receiver one. Then they have another one at wide receiver two.
Hmm.
It's like a Larry Fitzgerald, Anquan Bolden situation on the Cardinals for all the old heads out there. I'm gonna go. So you went passing game. I'm gonna go with the running game. As we talked about, it is come to somewhat of a standstill, but still possibly the best running back tandem in all of college football between Travion Henderson and Quinshon Junkins. Junkins has 22 missed tackles forced this year. That's 12th in the Big Ten. 6.4 yards per rush, 6 touchdowns on the year. Henderson, 16 missed tackles forced. That, in comparison, Atron leads Penn State with 19, so he's only 3 behind him. Second, 7.2 yards per rush and 4 touchdowns. So explosive playmakers. But since that left tackle, Justin Simmons, left in the second quarter of the Oregon loss, their run game has sputtered to a screech call. As a team, they ran for only 74 sack adjusted yards against Nebraska. That's 2.6 yards per carry on 28 rushes with no touchdowns. So my matchups are Tony Rojas and Kobe King. Tony Rojas having a great season. Unfortunately, leads the team in missed tackles with 13. Kobe King only has 3 this season, but we need guys like Tony Rojas. It's exactly why we recruited him. His sideline to sideline speed, that natural football instinct, coverage ability, et cetera, et cetera. He has to lock in. He has to lock in this game with Kobe King, shed those second level blocks coming from the offensive lineman, chase down those highly skilled running backs and to bounce it outside and make it tough for the Buckeyes to get that running game started again because it has come to a, like I said, screeching halt. So tough task for these linebackers. I think you can agree on that. But Kobe King, 41's been on fire. And Tony Rojas has all the traits to be an elite game breaker in this one. And I expect him to make his Penn State legacy play this game. As long as Ohio State can't get the game running,
Hmm.
who is your Iron Lion to watch against the Buckeyes? Defense, offense, both, special teams?
Going with both.
Oh,
So I
okay.
got one on offense, one on defense. For one, for me, it's got to be Tyler Warren.
Mhm.
Julian Fleming seems like a too obvious choice. And no matter how bad I wanted to go with that one, I think that would be a
It's kind of scratch.
yeah,
Revenge
that
game
would be a
scratch.
little too storybook if we had a Julian Fleming game where you went off for, 10 catches, 100 plus yards,
Then
touchdown.
again, that's kind of the college football season this year.
Could be. So would love to see that, but I don't anticipate them game planning anything differently to try to get him more involved. I think more so it's just you're just hoping to see him provide a little bit more, maybe have a little bit more motivation here to really get rolling. But for me, it's got to be Tyler Warren. He's someone, obviously, we've seen the production, we've seen the different ways that he's been utilized in all these different formations, like I mentioned earlier. He's someone that opposing defenses definitely at this point, and even really by game two or three of this year, are strictly having a game plan for and trying to come up with plans to take away. I think he's that good of a player where this is the type of game where he just has to allow or put himself in a spot where he's not taken out of this ball game. We really definitely can't afford to have him completely shut down. So I think this is a big game to see where he truly produces at the level where we've seen him already this year. Now it doesn't may not necessarily need to be like what we saw against USC, 18 catches
Yeah,
and
setting
snapping the ball and catching
setting
a
national
touchdown.
records.
Like that was an absolutely insane game. But I think a very highly productive game from Tyler Warren is needed in this ball game to really make a difference and allow those receivers to maybe give them an opportunity to get open because they got to make some adjustments to account for it. So I'm expecting a big game from Warren.
So they're going to be keen on him though.
Hmm.
So say they key on Tyler Warren, the first like couple targets are he catches two for like 9 yards.
Hmm.
What's your backup plan then?
I would fully expect as they had, that they move him around and get him in some different spots to be able to get him the ball. I think the more attention that Ohio State has to pay to him, that's going to allow some of those other skill guys to be able to get out into some open space, like a Nick Singleton, like a Katron Allen. Maybe you see a Trey Wallace get open. So I know I'm talking about him creating opportunities for other guys, but I do really, really would love to see him have a big time game and a big time moment here to really solidify, not that he really needs to, but solidify his status as the top tight end in college football
Yeah, and no doubt that Big Zamboni's going to scheme him up.
for sure. And then second piece on defense is you saw last week how that key interception from this defense was able to completely shift the momentum of that game. I think this is another big time game where that's something that's probably going to be needed. And I would love and I expect and hope that it comes from Zakee Wheatley, the turnover king from fall camp and from spring camp. And I know we had some social media interaction with him this week. And don't worry, Zaki, we got you on the next photos that we use. We know we were using some old photos.
Or bad. We got
Our
you.
bad. We got you. But he's been having some big time games, leading the team in tackles. What was it? 14 tackles, 12, 14 tackles last week against Wisconsin.
Combined with Jalen Reed. But yeah, I think he had 10 tackles and then eight solo, something like
Yeah.
that. And yeah,
So he's been
insane.
all over the field, has really been stepping into that safety role and producing. So I think this is one of those games similar to that that going way back, but that season opener against Purdue where he had the big time turnover on that fumble. I think this is just a big game where that defense is going to have to come up with a big time turnover, and I expect Wheatley to be at the front end of
I love that. Love that would get The juice is flowing so much on a Saturday afternoon at noon. But speaking of the big turnover, I'm going with the guy who made it, Jalen Reed, to go along with the matchup with Tony Rojas and Kobe King, sort of in that line position, just being able to read Will Howard's eyes and helping the run game when they bounce it outside. But offensively, I'm going to go. Last week, I focused on Katron Allen having a big game in the run game. This week, I think it's going to be Nick Singleton. So if it's Aller or if it's Bo Perbula, Nick the Quick is going to be able to take some pressure off these guys with some swing passes, some screens, some check downs, and be able to create some yak with some open field, hopefully. And like you mentioned with Tyler Warren, they're going to key in on him. But I do believe that Kotelnicki will be scheming up both of those guys to become wide open and for whoever's playing quarterback to hit them in stride for a touchdown. And
Mhm.
I could definitely see the big Zamboni drawing up some kind of scheme where the whole defense is rolling one way and then they have Singleton leak out for a wheel route down
Mhm.
the sideline touchdown. Or just, give him some kind of mismatch. Like we line him up that crack block where he had the screen pass for the first down. They
Mhm.
line him up at like inline or offline tight end slot position with Katron in the backfield. Get him in any kind of mismatch.
Yeah.
Get Nick Singleton the ball in the open field. And I think we're going to have some good luck. So that will wrap it up for the Ohio State preview. Once again, thank all of you for your support of us. We cannot thank you enough on every single platform. We absolutely love doing this. We're going to keep doing it. And any way you can help out, a like, a retweet, a sub, a follow, anything. Keep us independent, keep us going, keep us trucking into the rest of the year.
Big game, baby. And happy Halloween.
Big game, big game. Let's beat the Buckeyes, baby.
Just give us one.